A billionaire's son was given just 4 months to live. The doctors had no answers, and even his father's billions couldn't buy a cure. But then a humble black maid did something no one expected. Something that would not only save the boy's life, but bring the powerful billionaire to his knees in tears. What happened next will leave you speechless. Welcome to Brainfuel, the place where stories spark emotion, inspire hope, and remind us of the power of faith, love, and resilience. If you believe in stories that touch the heart and fuel the mind, then hit that subscribe button and join our family today. Because here, every story is more than just words. It's brain fuel for the soul. The words echoed in the billionaire's ears like a death sentence. Your son has only 4 months to live. For a man who had conquered the business world, who had outsmarted competitors and built an empire worth billions, nothing had ever shaken him like those words. His fortune stretched across continents, luxury hotels, private jets, technology companies, and vast real estate. People called him untouchable, a man who had everything. But at that moment, in the sterile white walls of the hospital, he felt like the poorest man alive. His only son, Ethan, just 17 years old, lay weak and pale in the hospital bed. Machines beeped softly around him, their rhythm a cruel reminder that time was slipping away. Ethan's eyes, once filled with youthful spark, now seemed tired, as if the weight of the world pressed down on him. The illness had come suddenly. At first, it was just fatigue, then frequent fainting spells. But when the billionaire flew his son to the best hospitals in New York, London, and Dubai, the truth was uncovered. A rare condition, one that medicine could not cure completely. Treatments could slow it down, maybe add a little more time, but not save him. The billionaire sat in the doctor's office, trying to process the reality. But I'll pay anything, he argued. Name the price. Double it, triple it. There must be some trial, some experimental cure. The doctor shook his head gently. Sir, this is not about money. We have done everything humanly possible. Sometimes science has limits. The word stabbed deeper than any knife. Science has limits. Money has limits. Power has limits. When he walked out of the hospital that day, reporters and photographers were waiting, as they always were. He had trained himself to walk confidently in front of cameras, to look untouchable. But that evening he didn't care. He rushed past them, shielding his face, his heart heavier than it had ever been. Back at the mansion, silence swallowed the once bustling halls. The servants whispered behind closed doors. The family chef cried quietly in the kitchen while preparing meals Ethan barely touched. Guards, chauffeurs, assistants, everyone carried the same sadness. The mansion that once symbolized wealth and life now felt like a graveyard, waiting for the inevitable. But among all the people who served the billionaire's household, there was one who refused to surrender to despair. Maria. Maria had worked in the mansion for over 10 years. She was the black maid who knew every corner of the house, every secret, and every routine. To outsiders, she was just another staff member. But to Ethan, she was something more. She was like family. When Ethan was a boy, his father was always away on business trips, too busy signing contracts and sealing deals. Maria was the one who read him bedtime stories, kissed his forehead when he was sick, and clapped proudly at his school plays when his parents couldn't attend. She had been his shadow, his comfort, his safe place. And now, seeing him on the verge of death, Maria's heart broke more than words could explain. She sat by his bedside long after the nurses left. She held his hand gently, whispering words only he could hear. Don't give up, Ethan. I know you're tired, but I believe you'll live. You're stronger than this. For the first time in days, Ethan's lips curled into the faintest smile. He squeezed her hand weakly and whispered back, Thank you for believing in me. Maria made a silent promise that night. She would not sit idly by and watch the boy she had raised like her own son slip away. Doctors would predict months, but she believed in something greater, faith, love, and the strength of the human spirit. The billionaire, however, could not see what Maria saw. He was drowning in guilt. Every night he sat in his massive office, staring at the walls filled with awards, news articles, and photos of him shaking hands with world leaders. None of it mattered anymore. What good was power if he couldn't protect his son? He remembered the nights he missed Ethan's birthdays because of important meetings, the school events where Maria sent him photos because he was too busy, the promises of next time that never came. And now, there might not be a next time. One evening, he walked into Ethan's room. The boy was asleep, his frail body almost disappearing under the blankets. Maria sat nearby, softly humming a lullaby she had sung to him as a child. The billionaire stood there quietly, watching. For the first time, he saw what he had been blind to all along. It wasn't his billions that had given his son comfort all these years. It was Maria, and it was Maria who now carried hope when the world had declared defeat. In that moment, a thought pierced through the fog of despair. Maybe, just maybe, the answer didn't lie in hospitals or endless spending. Maybe the answer lay in something money couldn't buy. Faith, love, and the simple courage to keep going. But he didn't know yet that Maria was about to do something that would change everything. Something that would make him cry in a way no business loss or personal failure ever had. Something that would prove once and for all that life's greatest treasures aren't measured in dollars, but in love. The countdown had begun. 4 months left, the doctor said. But for Maria, the fight was only just beginning. Maria had always been more than just a maid. To many, she was invisible, a woman in a uniform, moving quietly through the mansion with a mop in her hands or a tray balanced carefully in her arms. But to Ethan, she had been a second mother. She had seen him take his first steps, had bandaged his scraped knees, had taught him little prayers before bed. She wasn't just a servant in the household. She was a piece of it heart. Now, as the mansion sat under the heavy cloud of despair, Maria was the only one who dared to carry light. The billionaire staff whispered in corners. Some talk about preparing for the inevitable, about funerals, about what the world would say when the news broke that the billionaire's only heir had just months to live. The air in the mansion was heavy, every room drenched in sadness. Even the walls seemed to echo grief. But Maria would not accept it. She had seen too many miracles in her lifetime to let hopelessness win. She came from a small, humble village far away, a place where doctors were rare and money was even rarer. When children fell ill, families didn't give up. They turned to nature, to prayer, to the wisdom of generations passed down. Maria had grown up watching her grandmother heal wounds with herbs, cure fevers with teas, and comfort the dying with words of unshakable faith. To outsiders, it seemed primitive. To Maria, it was survival, and more than that, it was proof that sometimes a human spirit could do what medicine could not. One night, long after the nurses had left and the billionaire had locked himself in his study drowning in his sorrow, Maria sat at Ethan's bedside. His frail fingers were cold against hers, and his breathing was shallow. She leaned close and whispered words that would plant a seed in his heart. "Ethan, I know what they said. I know they think you only have months. But I believe differently. I believe you will live. Do you hear me? You will live." His eyes fluttered open, dull with exhaustion. A tear slid down his cheek. "Everyone looks at me like I'm already gone," he said weakly. "Even Dad." He won't say it, but I see it in his eyes. "I'm not ready, Maria. I don't want to go yet." Her heart cracked at his words. She tightened her grip on his hand and replied firmly, "Then don't give up. As long as you're breathing, there's hope. You are stronger than this illness, and I will not let you face this alone." For the first time in days, Ethan smiled, a small, tired smile, but a smile nonetheless. Maria's faith gave him something the doctors couldn't, the will to keep fighting. From that night on, Maria made her mission to bring life back into Ethan's days, while others walked on eggshells around him. Speaking in whispers and avoiding eye contact, Maria treated him as if he were still the same boy she had known since childhood. She joked with him, teased him gently, told him stories about her youth in the village, stories of struggle, survival, and triumph against impossible odds. She told him about her father, who had once been told he wouldn't live past 50, but survived another 20 years because he refused to surrender. She told him about her brother, who had been injured in an accident and was told he'd never walk again, but through sheer determination and faith, he stood tall at her wedding years later. "Doctors can measure time," Maria said softly, brushing Ethan's hair back from his forehead. "But they can't measure spirit. Spirit can surprise them. Spirit can break their rules. Her words weren't just stories. They were fuel. They sparked something inside Ethan, a desire to hold on, to prove the doctors wrong, to fight for his life. But Maria's strength wasn't just in her stories. It was in her actions. She began sneaking small changes into his routine. Little things she believed could help. She brewed him teas made from herbs her grandmother once used for strength and immunity. She encouraged him to sit up, to take short walks even when his legs trembled, to look out at the sunrise from his window. When Ethan's appetite disappeared, she coaxed him with food cooked with care, spiced in ways that made the bland hospital diet tolerable. And when he couldn't eat, she sat with him anyway, telling him that sometimes nourishment wasn't only about food, it was about love, laughter, and hope. The billionaire noticed these small changes but didn't comment. He was too weighed down by his own despair. He saw the world in terms of numbers, for months, maybe less, and numbers had always told him the truth in business. He didn't realize yet that his maid was quietly rewriting the story. One afternoon, the billionaire walked into Ethan's room and saw something that stunned him. His son, who'd been too weak to lift his head days ago, was laughing. Maria sat at his side, animatedly mimicking one of the mansion's guards, making Ethan chuckle until he coughed. For a moment, the billionaire saw not a dying boy, but the child he had nearly forgotten, the boy full of light and joy. And for a split second, hope flickered in his chest. But when he looked at Maria, something else struck him. She wasn't just offering comfort. She was carrying something he had lost, the unshakable belief that Ethan could make it. That night, when Maria returned to her small quarters in the mansion, she prayed silently, tears running down her face. God, don't take him yet. Give me strength to help him. He's too young. His story isn't finished. She didn't know exactly how, but she knew one thing with certainty. If there was even a small chance to save Ethan, she would find it. She would not let him leave this world without a fight. And so, while the billionaire counted down days, Maria began to plan for something far bigger. She wasn't just going to comfort Ethan in his final months. She was going to give him a chance to live. It was a decision that would soon take them on a journey no one expected, one that would test faith, break barriers, and change the billionaire's heart forever. The morning after her whispered promise to Ethan, Maria gathered her courage and did something no one in the household dared to do. She went straight to the billionaire's private office. He sat behind a massive mahogany desk, his eyes buried in medical reports, his phone buzzing with international calls from doctors and specialists. His face was pale from sleepless nights, his once sharp and commanding posture now slumped. Maria knocked softly, then stepped inside. "Sir," she said carefully, "I need to talk to you about Ethan." The billionaire looked up, his eyes sharp and tired. "What is it, Maria?" "If you're here to ask for extra care, don't worry. I've already hired the best. Whatever the doctors recommend, it will be done." She shook her head. "That's not what I came to ask. I want to take Ethan away from here, to my village." For a moment, silence filled the room. The billionaire stared at her, almost stunned by the audacity of her words. Then his brows furrowed. "Your village? Maria, this isn't the time for fairy tales. My son is dying. He needs specialists, not—" He waved his hand dismissively. "Whatever it is you think your village can offer." Maria didn't flinch. She clasped her hands together tightly, her voice steady but firm. "Sir, with all respect, the doctors have given up. You've spent millions already, and they've told you the same thing. For months. But I've seen things in my village that science can't explain. People who were written off. People who were told they had no chance. But they lived. Not because of machines or money, but because of faith, love, and traditions that heal the spirit as well as the body. Give me a chance. Let me try." The billionaire stood, his frustration spilling over. "Maria, do you hear yourself? I can't risk the little time my son has left on superstition. What if something happens to him out there? What if he dies sooner because of your foolishness?" Maria's eyes glistened with tears, but she did not back down. "He is already dying here, sir. At least let him die surrounded by hope, not machines. But I don't believe he will die. I believe he will live. I believe there's more waiting for him, than just these hospital walls. You can't see it because grief has blinded you, but I can. I've loved that boy like my own since he was a child. Please, let me try." Her words hung in the air like a challenge. The billionaire turned away, pacing. Logic told him it was madness. But another part of him, the father buried beneath the billionaire's armor, hesitated. Maria's voice had something the doctor's voices didn't. Conviction. Finally, after what felt like forever, he spoke. 3 days. That's all I'll allow. You can take him, but if he worsens, I'll bring him back immediately. Do you understand?" Maria's heart leapt. She nodded quickly, tears of relief streaming down her face. "Thank you, sir. You won't regret this." The next morning, Ethan was bundled carefully into a car. He was weak, but when Maria told him they were going to her village, something sparked in his tired eyes. "Your village?" he whispered. "What's it like?" Maria smiled warmly. "It's nothing like this mansion. It's simple, but it's full of people who care, people who pray, people who believe in life. And it's full of fresh air and food that grows from the ground. You'll see." The journey was long. The sleek black car drove away from skyscrapers, highways, and the noise of the city, moving toward dirt roads, wide fields, and small houses with tin roofs. For Ethan, who had only known the luxury of marble floors and golden chandeliers, it was like stepping into another world. When they arrived, villagers gathered curiously. They whispered among themselves at the sight of the pale boy carried gently into Maria's small childhood home. But when Maria explained who he was and why she had brought him, they welcomed Ethan with open arms. From that moment, Ethan was no longer the billionaire's son. He was just Ethan, the boy everyone wanted to help. Maria wasted no time. She went to the elders, wise men and women who had lived through sickness, famine, and hardship, and who carried knowledge of herbs and remedies passed down through generations. They gave her plants and roots to brew into teas, mixtures to strengthen Ethan's body, and balms to ease his pain. She also changed his environment completely. No sterile hospital rooms. No constant beeping machines. Instead, Ethan's bed was placed by a window that overlooked fields of green. Birds sang at dawn. Children laughed as they played outside, and every night, the stars glittered above like diamonds on velvet. At first, Ethan was too weak to move much, but Maria encouraged him gently. "Just 1 step today, Ethan. Tomorrow, 2 steps. We'll go slow, but we'll go forward." With her support, he tried. Each day, he managed a little more. First sitting up, then walking to the doorway, then stepping outside to feel the grass beneath his bare feet. Each small victory made him smile again. The villagers embraced him. They prayed for him every evening, gathering in circles and lifting his name to the heavens. They told him stories of survival, of battles won against sickness and despair. They laughed with him, played music for him, and reminded him what it felt like to live, not just exist. For Ethan, it was like breathing for the first time. He realized in the mansion, surrounded by wealth, he had never truly felt alive. But here, in a place without riches, he found life in every sunrise and every smile. When the billionaire visited after a week, he was stunned. His son was thinner, yes, but he was also smiling, his cheeks flushed with color he hadn't seen in months. He saw Ethan trying to walk, holding Maria's hand, laughing when he stumbled. The sight broke him. Tears filled his eyes as he whispered to himself, "I haven't seen him smile like that in years." And for the first time, the billionaire realized that Maria hadn't just brought Ethan to her village. She had brought him back to life in ways doctors and billions never could. The days in Maria's village passed slowly, but for Ethan, each moment became a battle and a victory. Every morning, Maria would gently wake him. "Ethan," she'd whisper, drawing the curtains to let the sunrise spill into the room. "One more step, one more breath, one more day. That's all we need." At first, those words sounded simple. But to Ethan, who had been told his life was already ending, they became a lifeline. One more step meant defiance. One more breath meant hope. One more day meant a chance to prove the doctors wrong. But the illness did not simply disappear. It clung to him like a shadow. There were nights when he woke drenched in sweat, his body trembling with pain so sharp he could barely speak. There were mornings when he could not get out of bed, his strength drained completely. Each time, despair tried to creep back in, yet Maria was always there. She sat by his side, pressing cool cloths against his forehead, whispering prayers over him, and refusing to let him believe the worst. "This sickness is strong," she would tell him softly, "but you are stronger. I know you are." Her confidence was unshakable, and slowly it began to seep into Ethan's heart. Maria didn't just heal his body, she worked on his spirit. She filled his days with purpose. In the mornings, she took him to sit outside, even if all he could do was breathe the fresh air and watch the children of the village play. She encouraged him to draw strength from nature, the warmth of the sun, the coolness of the breeze, the scent of flowers and earth. "These things remind us that life is still here, Ethan," she said. "And as long as life is here, so are you." She also began to share more of her own story. Ethan, who had always lived wrapped in wealth, listened with wide eyes as she spoke of her childhood. She told him about nights when her family went to bed hungry, about the time she thought she'd never finish school because she had to work in the fields, about her brother who almost died when they couldn't afford medicine. "But we made it," Maria said firmly, her eyes shining. "We made it because we didn't stop believing. When everything seemed lost, we still had faith, and faith carried us through." Ethan absorbed her words like water to a dry sponge. He realized that while he'd grown up surrounded by abundance, Maria had grown up surrounded by struggle, and yet she carried more hope in her heart than anyone he had ever known. The billionaire visited often. At first, he remained skeptical, sitting stiffly in the corner of the small house, watching his son interact with the villagers. But the more he saw, the more his heart softened. One afternoon, he found himself sitting beside Maria as Ethan slept peacefully. His voice was low, heavy with regret. "I spent my whole life believing money could solve anything. I thought if I just worked harder, earned more, I could protect him from everything. But look at me. I couldn't save my own son." Maria looked at him, her expression calm but firm. "You protected him in the only way you knew, sir. But sometimes love doesn't look like money or gifts. Sometimes it looks like sitting by his bed, holding his hand, telling him he matters more than anything in the world. That's all he's ever wanted. From you, not your wealth." The billionaire's throat tightened. He had no response, only tears he quickly wiped away before anyone could see. For the first time, he understood that Maria wasn't just fighting for Ethan's body. She was healing the wounds of his soul, too. Ethan's determination grew. Each day, he pushed himself a little further. At first, walking across the yard felt like climbing a mountain. But Maria cheered every step, clapping and laughing as though he won a gold medal. The villagers joined in, encouraging him like family. Their voices became his strength. Then came the day when Ethan surprised everyone. Without Maria's help, he stood on his own 2 feet, trembling but upright, and took several steps toward his father. The billionaire leapt up, tears flooding his eyes, and caught his son in a hug. "I knew you could do it," Maria said softly, her face glowing with pride. The father looked at her, overwhelmed. "How? How did you believe when no one else did?" Maria smiled gently. "Because I never looked at the sickness, sir. I looked at the boy, and I saw more life in him than death. Still, the fight was not easy. The illness had its moments of cruelty. Ethan collapsed more than once, gasping for air, his body too weak to go on. In those moments, Maria would kneel beside him, cradling his head, whispering over and over, "You're not done yet. You're not done." One evening, Ethan asked her directly, his voice small and trembling, "Maria, am I really going to live? Or are you just saying that to make me feel better?" Maria took his hand in hers, squeezing it tightly. "Ethan, I don't know what tomorrow holds. None of us do. But I know this. You are not finished. Your story isn't over. You will see more days, more sunrises, more laughter. I believe it with all my heart." Ethan closed his eyes, tears streaming down his face. "Then I'll believe it too." Slowly but surely, the boy who had once been given 4 months began to show signs of strength. His color returned. His laugh grew louder. His steps grew steadier. It wasn't a miracle that happened overnight. It was a battle fought inch by inch, fueled by Maria's unwavering love and the villagers' constant support. For the billionaire, each visit to the village was like witnessing the impossible unfold before his eyes. He began to join the prayers at night, bowing his head with the villagers, something he had never done before. He began to eat the simple food, walk barefoot with his son, and for the first time in his life, he felt the weight of his fortune lift from his shoulders. He realized something profound. His billions had built empires, but Maria's faith had saved his son. Months had passed since the day Maria first carried Ethan to her village, and what began as a desperate gamble had become something no one could deny, a miracle unfolding before their very eyes. The boy who had once been so pale and fragile, his body nearly swallowed by illness, was now laughing again, walking again, even running short distances with the village children. He still had weak days, yes, but he no longer looked like a boy on the edge of death. He looked like a young man rediscovering life. When the time came for Ethan's checkup, the billionaire flew him back to the city hospital. Maria went along, her hands folded tightly in prayer. Neither she nor Ethan spoke much during the trip. The weight of the doctor's original words, "for months to live," still haunted them. The doctors ran test after test. They studied scans, blood reports, and charts, their faces shifting from confusion to disbelief. They whispered to each other in the hallway, shaking their heads. Finally, the lead doctor entered the room, his voice unsteady. This doesn't make sense," he admitted. "The illness that was spreading so aggressively has slowed. In fact, it's gone into remission. His body is healing itself. We can't explain it medically, but Ethan is not dying. He is recovering." Maria closed her eyes, tears streaming freely down her cheeks. Ethan's father gripped the edge of the bed, overcome by emotions he had buried for years. He pulled his son into a fierce embrace, sobbing openly for the first time in decades. My boy, my boy." But when he turned toward Maria, something inside him broke completely. The billionaire, a man feared in boardrooms, respected by world leaders, admired by millions, fell to his knees before his maid. His voice cracked as he whispered through tears, "Maria, thank you. You saved my son. You gave me back the one thing money could never buy. I owe you more than I can ever repay." Maria knelt too, refusing to let him bow lower than her. She shook her head, her voice trembling but strong. "No, sir. Don't thank me. Thank God. Thank faith. Thank the love that never gave up. I didn't save him. He saved himself by choosing to believe. All I did was remind him how." The room was silent except for the sound of Ethan's laughter, light and genuine, the kind of laugh that had been absent for too long. The billionaire's perspective on life changed forever that day. For so long, he had measured value in numbers, profits, assets, shares, luxury. But watching his son recover, he realized the most priceless treasures were things he had overlooked. Faith, love, community, and time with the people he cared about. He decided he could never return to his old ways. Business deals no longer mattered more than birthdays. Meetings no longer mattered more than dinners at home. From that moment, he vowed that Ethan would never again feel like a lonely boy growing up in the shadow of his father's empire. He also vowed something else. He would never forget what Maria had done. The news of Ethan's recovery spread quickly. Reporters who had once speculated about the tragedy of the billionaire's heir now called it the miracle recovery. But whenever anyone asked the billionaire for a statement, he gave the same answer. It wasn't science that saved my son. It wasn't money. It was love. It was faith. And it was Maria. He spoke her name with reverence, as though she were more than just a maid, as though she were an angel who had stepped into their lives at the exact moment they needed her most. For Ethan, life after recovery was completely different. He no longer cared about designer clothes or flashy cars. He cared about people, about the children in Maria's village who had played with him, about the elders who had prayed for him, about the countless strangers who carried struggles like his but without the resources he had. One evening, sitting on the porch of the mansion, Ethan turned to his father. "I don't just want to live, Dad. I want to live for something. I want to help kids like me, The ones who don't have Maria, who don't have people believe in them. I want to give them hope. The billionaire listened, his heart swelling with pride. His son was alive, yes, but more than that, his son had found a purpose. To honor Maria, the billionaire made a decision that shocked the world. He launched a foundation, not under his own name, but under hers. The Maria Foundation for Hope and Healing. Its mission was simple but powerful: to provide medical care, emotional support, and faith-driven guidance for children battling illnesses, especially those from underprivileged backgrounds. At the grand opening, the billionaire stood on stage, his son smiling proudly beside him, and Maria sitting humbly in the front row. Cameras flashed, reporters scribbled notes, but the billionaire's voice was steady. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "I once believed money could buy everything. But when my son's life was slipping away, it was not money that saved him. It was the love of a woman who refused to give up, a woman who saw life where others saw death. This foundation carries her name because she is the reason my son is standing here today. She reminded me of the most important truth. Love is the greatest wealth we can ever have." The audience erupted into applause, many with tears streaming down their faces. Maria lowered her head, overwhelmed, never having imagined that her name would be celebrated in such a way. Years later, Ethan lived not as a billionaire there defined by riches, but as a man defined by resilience and compassion. He often returned to Maria's village, where the children now saw him not as a sick boy, but as an older brother and mentor. The billionaire, too, found peace and simplicity. He spent less time in corporate towers and more time walking barefoot with his son, listening to Maria's wisdom, and cherishing every sunrise as if it were a gift. And whenever people asked how the miracle had happened, Ethan would smile and answer simply, "Because someone believed in me when no one else did." The boy given 4 months to live had a lifetime ahead of him, and the maid who was once invisible became the woman whose love changed everything, leaving even the wealthiest man in tears of gratitude.